She thought stealing my login credentials would make her the next engineering superstar. Instead, she just handed me the perfect tool to watch her destroy her own career with designs that could have killed people. I'm Garrett Coleman, 47 years old, and this is how I used patience and precision engineering to let someone hang themselves with their own ambition. I've been designing bridges and infrastructure for Morrison Engineering Solutions here in Houston for 12 years now. Started right after my Army service ended, worked my way up from junior engineer to senior project lead. The company's good to me, decent benefits, steady work, and they understand when I need to leave early for my son's baseball games or take my mom to her doctor appointments. Being a widower with a 16-year-old and a 72-year-old mother means my schedule isn't exactly flexible. The military taught me something civilian engineers often miss. When you're building a bridge in Kandahar and lives depend on your calculations being right, you learn that shortcuts kill people. I saw it happen once, a pontoon bridge designed by some hotshot engineer fresh out of West Point. Beautiful on paper, disaster in practice. 3 good soldiers got hurt when the approach spans failed because the kid didn't account for the soil conditions properly. That image sticks with you. My son Jake always asks why I double-check everything 3 times. Dad, you already ran those calculations twice. But that's exactly why we're both alive and healthy today. In engineering, there's no such thing as being too careful. Every beam, every foundation depth, every stress calculation, they all matter because real people drive over what you design every single day. Mom doesn't really understand what I do anymore. The dementia is getting worse, but she still remembers when I got back from Afghanistan. My boy builds bridges now. Instead of blowing them up, she tells her nurses. It's not entirely accurate, but close enough. The Army Corps of Engineers did plenty of building between the demolitions. So when Morrison hired this MIT graduate straight out of school, promising he'd revolutionize our approach to infrastructure design, I already knew we were headed for trouble. His name was Hunter Davis, 29 years old, and he walked into our office like he owned the place. Perfect smile, firm handshake, and a portfolio that read like engineering fantasy fiction. Apparently, he'd developed some new approach to span-to-depth ratios that would change everything about modern bridge construction. The whole office was buzzing about this wonder kid before he'd even finished his first week. I watched from my corner workstation as he made his rounds, shaking hands and dropping names from his MIT professors, like they were supposed to mean something to guys who'd been building actual bridges for decades. His confidence reminded me of that lieutenant back in Afghanistan, all theory, no practical experience. Our CEO, Brooke Williams, introduced him during the Monday morning meeting. Hunter brings fresh thinking to government contracting, she announced while Hunter stood there radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having a design fail in the real world. His innovative approach will help us capture larger state contracts and modernize our design methodologies. Then she looked at me. Garrett will be handling technical oversight and ensuring all designs meet safety specifications. Translation: I do the actual engineering work while Hunter gets the credit. I'd heard this song before. The first red flag came during his second day. Hunter was looking at our current projects board, pointing at the Cypress Creek overpass we'd just completed. Why did you use such conservative load factors? You could have saved 20% on materials with optimized calculations. Shane Pierce, our junior engineer, looked confused. Those are standard Texas DOT requirements. We can't just ignore state safety margins. Hunter waved dismissively. Those are legacy constraints. Real innovation requires pushing past traditional limitations. He pulled out his laptop and started showing alternative calculations. Beautiful spreadsheets, impressive graphics, and load factors that would have turned that overpass into a death trap during the first major storm. I'd heard similar logic from young officers who thought battlefield tactics were suggestions rather than life-saving procedures. The results were usually educational and occasionally catastrophic. That afternoon, Hunter found me at my workstation. Didn't knock on my cubicle wall, just walked right in. Military protocol teaches you basic respect. You announce yourself when entering someone's workspace. Civilians who ignore this usually ignore other important boundaries too. You must be Garrett, he said, flashing that MBA smile. I've heard you're the technical expert around here. The compliment felt manufactured, like something from a management handbook about dealing with older employees. I'm excited to collaborate on some revolutionary approaches to infrastructure design. I smiled politely and asked what revolutionary approaches he had in mind. His answer was predictable, something about leveraging digital optimization to disrupt traditional structural paradigms. In plain English, he wanted to use computer modeling to replace the judgment that comes from actually building things. When I mentioned soil load factors and real-world stress testing, he waved it off. Those are legacy constraints. Innovation requires pushing past traditional limitations. The way he said traditional made it sound like a dirty word. Like the safety protocols that kept bridges standing were just old-fashioned thinking that needed to be updated. I've seen what happens when you ignore those protocols. It's not pretty. Over the next few weeks, Hunter's pattern became clear. He'd show up to meetings with flashy presentations about revolutionary design concepts, then disappear when it came time for the actual engineering work. The calculations, the safety reviews, the tedious but critical work of making sure bridges don't collapse, that all fell to me and Shane. Shane's a good kid, reminds me of the junior engineers I used to mentor back in the Army. Smart, eager to learn, and most importantly, he understands that engineering isn't about showing off, it's about keeping people safe. He started noticing things too. "Garrett, have you looked at Hunter's portfolio projects?" Shane asked me one afternoon while we were reviewing foundation specs for a small county bridge. I tried to verify some of his previous work for reference. Half of those projects were never actually built. That didn't surprise me. In the Army, we called them PowerPoint warriors, officers who could brief a perfect mission, but had never actually led troops in the field. They understood the theory, but missed the crucial details that only come from real experience. The breaking point came when we landed the big one, a $45 million highway bridge project for the Texas Department of Transportation. This wasn't some small county crossing. This was a major interstate bridge over the Brazos River, carrying 50,000 vehicles daily through one of the busiest corridors in Texas. TxDOT doesn't mess around with safety requirements, and this particular bridge had some tricky soil conditions that would require careful foundation work. I spent 2 weeks developing the preliminary designs, running stress calculations, and modeling different foundation approaches. The soil reports showed typical Houston clay with some unusual density variations about 15 feet down. Nothing impossible to work with, but it meant the foundation system needed careful engineering. You can't just guess at load distribution when you're spanning 800 feet of river with that much traffic. The work was solid, conservative enough to be safe, innovative enough to be cost-effective. I used a hybrid approach, combining traditional deep foundations with some newer tension cable techniques that would reduce material costs without compromising safety margins. Everything documented and double-checked, because that's how you avoid killing people. Hunter barely participated in the design phase. He'd show up to review meetings, nod approvingly at my calculations, and make vague comments about optimization opportunities and paradigm shifts. Then he'd disappear back to his office to work on whatever MIT graduates do when they're not actually engineering, but he was paying attention. I noticed him asking detailed questions about the foundation specs, the load calculations, even the soil density reports. At the time, I thought he was finally trying to learn something practical. Shows how much I knew about human nature. Tuesday evening, around 6:30, Hunter showed up at my workstation. The office was mostly empty, just the hum of computers and the distant sound of Houston traffic. Most of the younger engineers had left by 5:30, but I was still working through some final calculations for the approach spans. "I need your login credentials for the project files," he said. Not asks, stated. "I'm putting together a presentation for TxDOT and need to access the working documents. In the Army, unauthorized access to classified materials meant court-martial. In civilian engineering, apparently it was just standard procedure for rising stars. Those files contain preliminary calculations," I said carefully. "They're not client-ready yet. Some of the load factors are still being verified." He waved dismissively. "I understand what I'm doing. I just need to pull some frameworks for Thursday's presentation meeting." Then he just stood there expecting compliance. I could have refused. Could have escalated to Brooke and demanded proper authorization. Could have explained that those files contained working drafts with assumptions that needed verification before any client saw them. Instead, I remembered something my squad leader used to say. Sometimes the best way to teach someone about consequences is to let them experience them directly. "I'll email you the credentials," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Everything you need should be in the project folders." As he walked away, I sat there staring at my monitor, 12 years of watching my work disappear into other people's highlight reels. 12 years of being told I wasn't leadership material while leaders presented my designs to clients who trusted my expertise. Something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. I had a choice. I could let Hunter present my actual work and watch him get credit for 2 weeks of careful engineering. Or I could teach him why you don't steal credentials from someone who's been building things longer than you've been alive. I opened a new folder and started typing. TxDOT Final Deliverables GC with my initials barely visible at the end. Time to arm the trap. Creating those dummy files felt like planning a military operation. Each design needed to look perfect on the surface, but contained fatal flaws that would detonate under professional scrutiny from people who actually knew bridge engineering. I spent the next 3 evenings after Hunter left usually around 700, crafting my masterpieces. The genius wasn't in making them obviously wrong. Any idiot could spot that. The genius was in making them look professionally correct to someone who didn't understand the underlying engineering principles while ensuring they'd be immediately flagged by anyone with real experience. File 1. Foundation specifications, beautiful CAD drawings, professional formatting, color-coded soil analysis charts that would make any MBA swoon. But underneath that polished surface, I'd specified foundation depths that were completely inadequate for Houston's clay soil conditions. Any structural engineer would spot it immediately. You can't build a $45 million bridge on foundations designed for a garden shed. The irony was perfect. Hunter wanted to cut corners and ignore safety margins. I was giving him exactly what he wanted, a design that looked innovative, but was actually catastrophically dangerous. File 2. Load calculations. The spreadsheets were works of art, detailed stress analysis, safety factor calculations, quarterly load projections that would impress any business school professor, but the underlying math was catastrophically wrong. I'd used outdated wind load factors that hadn't been legal since 1995. Building codes exist for good reasons. Ignore them and people die. The beauty was in the subtlety. To Hunter, scanning through for impressive numbers and professional formatting, everything would look cutting edge. To the TX engineers who'd been reviewing bridge designs since before Hunter was born, it would be immediately obvious that someone had used obsolete standards that would turn a bridge into a death trap during the first major storm. File 3. Material specifications. This one was my personal favorite. I'd specified steel grades that looked impressive on paper but weren't rated for the dynamic loads a highway bridge experiences. The tensile strength numbers were beautiful, the reality was terrifying. Any engineer who'd actually worked with structural steel would know that grade 50 steel can't handle highway loading without proper reinforcement. Files 4 through 7 followed the same pattern, professional presentation hiding dangerous incompetence. A traffic flow analysis that violated state safety requirements, drainage specifications that would flood during normal Texas rainstorms, and anyone who's lived through a Houston hurricane knows what happens when drainage fails. Expansion joint calculations that would buckle during our summer heat cycles. The genius was in the details. Each document included my standard file naming and metadata showing creation dates from before Hunter even joined the company. Meanwhile, I created the real designs in password-protected folders with comprehensive documentation of every decision and calculation. Hunter took the bait immediately. Within hours of getting the credentials, he was downloading everything. I watched the access logs like a sniper observing target movement, patient, methodical, documenting every action. My background monitoring script recorded every file he accessed, every download, every time he copied my work and stripped my initials from the file names. By the next morning, he was presenting my sabotaged work as his revolutionary engineering breakthrough. I worked all night developing these approaches he announced during our team stand-up, pointing to calculations I'd created weeks earlier. The insights are groundbreaking. Shane Pierce raised his hand and I felt a surge of pride. The kid was learning to spot problems. Those foundation specs seem shallow for our soil conditions. Are we really going with 8-foot pilings for a bridge this size? Hunter's smile never wavered, but I caught the micro-expression of someone scrambling for justification. That's exactly the conventional thinking we need to challenge. Sometimes engineering requires bold approaches that make traditional designers uncomfortable. He clicked to the next slide, my intentionally disastrous load calculations. Look at these efficiency opportunities. This is why TX hired us to revolutionize their infrastructure approach. I took notes like a supportive team member. Internally, I was cataloging every false claim, every moment he passed off my poisoned work as innovative thinking. The kid was building his entire reputation on strategies that would fail spectacularly under professional scrutiny. The most revealing moment came during our Thursday afternoon check-in with Brooke Williams. Hunter was showing our CEO his progress using my dummy files exclusively. The engineering work is exceptional, Brooke said, glancing at me. Garrett, your foundation expertise really shows through here. Actually, Hunter interjected smoothly. While Garrett provided some initial data gathering, I've completely reimagined the structural approach based on my MIT research background. This represents a fundamentally different methodology than what traditional bridge engineers typically recommend. I smiled and nodded. Hunter has definitely put his unique perspective on the project. Let him claim it. Let him own it. Let him build his entire career on engineering that would collapse under state review. Every presentation made him more committed, more invested in the fiction. He couldn't reverse course without admitting he'd been presenting garbage for weeks. Meanwhile, I maintained 2 parallel workflows. The dummy files continued feeding Hunter's growing confidence while I built the real strategy in secured folders only I could access. The actual Brazos River Bridge analysis told a completely different story. Genuine structural solutions, authentic foundation strategies, and actionable designs that would legitimately handle 50,000 vehicles daily for the next 50 years. Every framework was documented, every assumption explained, and every recommendation grounded in my 12 years of combined military and civilian engineering experience. This was my insurance policy, my ace in the hole waiting in the wings while Hunter performed his dance of destruction with my poisoned intelligence. The real designs accounted for Houston's soil conditions, incorporated proper safety margins for wind loads, and used steel grades actually rated for highway applications. The preliminary review with TxDOT was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Hunter had already sent them the complete design package, 47 slides of beautiful incompetence. A monument to everything wrong with prioritizing innovation over safety. There was no turning back. The fuse was burning, and I had front row seats to the explosion. But first, I needed to make sure my real designs were ready for deployment, just in case anyone asked what actual competence looked like. Over the weekend, I ran final calculations on the legitimate bridge design. Everything checked out: foundation depths appropriate for clay soil, load factors meeting current Texas standards, material specifications that would actually work. The kind of boring, reliable engineering that keeps people alive. Jake helped me organize the documentation, though he didn't understand what we were doing. "Dad, why do you have two different sets of bridge plans? Sometimes you need a backup plan, son. In engineering, redundancy saves lives." Monday morning arrived with the clarity that comes from knowing you've prepared for every contingency. Hunter spent the day rehearsing his presentation, confident in his revolutionary approach to infrastructure design. I spent the day double-checking calculations and preparing for the aftermath. By Tuesday morning, one of us would be vindicated. The other would be updating his resume. The TxDOT conference room looked like mission control for bridge building. Engineering charts covered the walls, and a table large enough for 20 people dominated the center. 15 state engineers filed in that Tuesday morning, including Logan Reed, the project director, and Savannah Foster, TxDOT's chief engineering officer and former Air Force colonel who'd built half the military infrastructure in the Middle East. You don't get to be TxDOT's chief engineer by accident. Savannah had survived 3 Pentagon tours, 2 combat deployments, and decades of dealing with contractors who thought they could cut corners on public safety. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation tight bun, and her handshake could crack walnuts. Hunter's MIT credentials weren't going to impress her. Hunter arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He worked the room like a politician, all confident handshakes and startup jargon. I sat in the back row, laptop ready, watching his performance with the detached interest of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. Logan Reed called the meeting to order. "Let's see what Morrison Engineering has developed for the Brazos River crossing." Hunter clicked through his opening slides with practiced confidence: company overview, project timeline, innovation promises, safe territory that couldn't expose the problems underneath. I recognized the tactical approach from military briefings. Build confidence before delivering the payload. Unfortunately for Hunter, his payload was a live grenade with the pin already pulled. Then came slide 12, foundation specifications. The moment the drawings appeared on screen, I watched Logan's expression shift from polite attention to professional concern. Hunter had just recommended 8-foot foundations for a bridge that needed 12-foot pilings minimum. "Can you explain these foundation depths?" Logan asked, his voice maintaining diplomatic neutrality while his eyes telegraphed skepticism. 8 feet seems inadequate for this soil profile. Hunter's smile never wavered, but I caught the micro-tension around his eyes, the first crack in his confidence. "Our analysis shows significant cost savings through optimized foundation design," he replied smoothly. "These specifications represent breakthrough thinking that challenges traditional over-engineering." Savannah Foster leaned forward slightly, her colonel instincts engaging. "Son, this bridge carries 50,000 vehicles daily. We don't do breakthrough thinking with public safety. Those foundation depths would be inadequate for a parking garage, let alone a major highway bridge." Slide 15. Load calculations. Logan pulled out his tablet, his frown deepening as he cross-referenced Hunter's numbers with actual building codes. "These wind load factors. When was this analysis completed? These standards haven't been legal since the Clinton administration. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. You could have heard a pin drop if it weren't for the sound of Hunter's career imploding in real time. Innovation requires challenging outdated regulatory constraints," Hunter said, though his hand trembled slightly on the presentation remote. Slide 18. Material specifications. Now even junior engineers were exchanging concerned glances. A whispered conversation erupted at the far end of the table. Someone was definitely running calculations on their phone. "Mr. Davis," Logan said, ice crystallizing in his voice. Are you seriously specifying grade 50 steel for dynamic highway loading? This bridge would fail during the first major storm. Have you ever actually built anything? The room fractured. Voices rose as engineers identified additional problems. Why were the expansion joints undersized? How could drainage be this inadequate? Are these really the final specifications for a $45 million project that people's lives depend on? Hunter floundered, retreating into consultant buzzwords about paradigm shifts and revolutionary approaches. Each answer dug his grave deeper. The military executives exchanged the kind of looks that usually preceded court-martial proceedings. Then Savannah Foster asked the killing question, her colonel voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Do you have any actual bridge design experience at all? Silence descended like a tactical nuke. 15 pairs of eyes locked on Hunter. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound emerged. The confident MIT graduate had finally encountered a situation that couldn't be solved with PowerPoint animations and startup jargon. Logan's voice was quiet, controlled, lethal. Mr. Coleman, do you have anything to contribute? Every head turned toward me. Hunter went pale, finally understanding that his house of cards was collapsing in real time. I stood, smoothing my jacket with the deliberate calm of someone who'd spent years preparing for high-pressure situations. Yes, Mr. Reed, I do. My laptop was already open, real designs loaded, grounded in 12 years of combined military and civilian engineering experience. May I? I connected to the projector. Hunter's fantasy vanished. Reality appeared. Foundation specifications based on actual soil bore samples, I said, voice steady and professional. 12-foot pilings with reinforced caissons properly rated for Houston clay conditions and seismic requirements. Logan leaned forward, relief visible in his posture. These depths match our internal safety protocols exactly. I walked them through the real engineering, proper load calculations using current wind standards, appropriate steel grades for highway dynamics, adequate drainage for Texas weather patterns, and expansion joints sized for actual thermal cycles. Everything documented, everything verified, everything designed to keep people alive. 45 minutes later, the room had transformed from hostile interrogation to collaborative planning session. Questions became implementation details. Concerns evolved into construction timeline discussions. This was engineering, as it should be honest, rigorous, safety-conscious, and respectful of the life and death responsibilities that bridge designers carry. Finally, Savannah raised her hand, calling for order. Mr. Coleman, if you had this level of engineering competence available, why were we initially presented with that? She gestured toward Hunter, still frozen by the wall. I pulled up my evidence folder with the same methodical precision I'd once used to brief battalion commanders. Complete documentation, Colonel Foster, timestamps, access logs, email trails, file metadata. The flawed specifications were unauthorized working drafts, never intended for client presentation. Logan scrolled through the documentation on his tablet, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Unauthorized access, credential theft, presenting dangerous designs as final specifications. Savannah stood, her command presence filling the room. Gentlemen, we need a brief recess. Mr. Coleman, please remain available. When the room cleared, except for TX. Leadership, Savannah's military bearing softened slightly. That was quite a professional risk you took, son. I met her gaze steadily. My responsibility is accurate engineering, Colonel. I couldn't allow you to approve designs that would endanger the public. Logan looked up from his documentation review. 20 years in state engineering, and I've rarely seen someone stake their career on professional integrity. We want you leading this project. Can you deliver everything you just presented? Yes, ma'am, but I'll need proper authority and direct access to your soil engineers and safety inspectors. Done. She extended her hand with military crispness. When the Morrison team returned, Logan's message was unambiguous. We're proceeding with one condition. Garrett Coleman leads this engagement, non-negotiable. Back at Morrison, news traveled faster than email. Hunter was gone within 2 hours, escorted out by security while HR handled the legal implications. His engineering license was under review by the state board for presenting dangerous designs to a government client. By 300, Brooke announced to the entire company, Garrett Coleman is now Chief Engineering Officer. Hunter Davis is no longer with our organization. 6 months later, the Brazos River Bridge opened on schedule and under budget, exceeding all state safety requirements. It generated an 18% improvement in traffic flow and saved $3 million in long-term maintenance costs through proper initial design. Savannah sent a commendation letter that still hangs in my office. Professional integrity under pressure, the foundation of public trust. The invisible engineer was gone, In his place stood someone who understood that the most effective strategy isn't always the loudest one. Sometimes it's simply letting people reveal exactly who they are when they think nobody's watching. Sometimes the best revenge is giving someone enough rope to hang themselves and having the documentation to prove they tied the knot. In engineering, just like in life, the most dangerous people aren't the ones who don't know what they're doing. They're the ones who think they know better than everyone who came before them. Sometimes protecting what matters most means letting someone's own arrogance become their downfall, because the truth has a way of surfacing when lives are on the line.
Don't pity me. My heart doesn't need your mercy. I can still stand on my own. I was broken by your leaving, fell deeper than I thought I would. But pain has taught me how to heal now and survive what once I couldn't. You don't have to look back sadly, don't reach out with guilty hands. What you shattered made me stronger. Now I rise where I once collapsed. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. I once begged for your affection. Now I've learned my worth in scars. And the man you left in pieces found his own way through the dark. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll learn to breathe again. My heart doesn't need your pity, not another empty sign. I've got enough strength left within me to rebuild this life of mine. My feet are steady through the sorrow. I can stand through all the pain. You don't have to save me, darling. I'll rise alone again. I'll rise alone again.
They say just forget. Move on like it's easy. But forgetting you feels like remembering someone I've never seen. I've been trying to erase you from the places in my mind, but the harder that I fight it, the more you're hard to leave behind. Every memory keeps slipping through the cracks I try to close, like a face I should remember, but somehow never know. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. Every moment turns to fragments, every thought just fades to blue. Like I'm searching for a feeling that still only leads to you. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo. 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something true. But now every empty moment still reminds me what is real. Forgetting you feels impossible, like chasing something I can't hold, like trying to remember someone that I've never even known. I keep reaching through the silence for a past I can't undo. 'Cause letting go of what we had feels like losing something